initial hearing fees and the initial hearing fees, the first one hearing, the continuance hearing, and then today's second first compliance hearing.
Okay. Sir, do you have any questions for the city?
Yes. No.
Okay. Is there anything you'd like to say?
Yes.
No. All right.
Hi.
Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Okay. And you're the owner of the property, Mr. Mamain?
Yes.
Okay. What would you like to tell me, sir?
So I saw the pictures. Obviously, after those pictures been taken, we hired a contractor. He did a temporary wall in that opening on that north corner.
Right. Is that the Paul Culver Construction Company?
Yes.
Okay.
So they did the filling, and they put basically those piling walls into the ground to protect that. I spent on this $140,000.
Believe it.
Yeah, and that was we're supposed to go to the next stage of actually rebuild based on my plans that I have for my civil engineer. So and we had few things happening in a way of we had the hurricane a little bit and some shift some of the things. It's taking a pretty long time, and I can give you a little bit of a background. I had a really hardship over there from, I have a meeting with the insurance attorneys and everything. We're in court. Actually, I didn't get a single dollar that I was supposed to get to repair. So everything is like put a lot of stress on me, but I still get the money and
Are you suing your insurance company for coverage?
Yes. Right now is a mitigation stage.
That is, yes, I understand.
So in the January 6th, we have the mitigation that's supposed to be kind of almost final. So give me like an extra stress on top of everything. But still, I find and I took all my obligations. I was in contact with the city, everything that we had to do, and my goal is really to be like in 60 days, like really starting construction on the.
Right, you have to be compliant by January 20th. And I don't see you coming anywhere close to that, because 60 days out would put you into February. And I am painfully aware that if I start fining you $250 a day, it's going to make your construction costs look like nothing when I get done with the fines. I really need to see some progress here when it comes to the mitigation stage, which would mean pulling a permit before the deadline.
We'll do that.
Okay?
We'll do that.
Please, I have, my hands are tied, but you can go a long way toward helping yourself if you would go through the process of preparing to do something. Because right now, when I look at your permits, you have a roofing permit, and you haven't pulled a seawall permit or even started it. And I need something that I can say, well, at least he's trying. If 8 months from now you come here and I've got a $150,000 fine that I have to give you, and you're asking me to reduce it, I have to have something to hang my hat on to explain to the city council, well, this is a good reason to reduce it. So I feel bad for small businesses that have been damaged by the storm, and then your insurance company, who you relied on and paid premiums to, suddenly says, we don't know you anymore. I get that. Okay. The other thing that concerns me is you have $396.46 in outstanding costs to the city. Now, $400 is money,
I wasn't aware
but
of
it's
it,
not a
so-
lot of money.
Sure.
Can you pay that within 7 days,
Yes,
please?
I will do that.
All right.
Thank you.
Because, like I said, I don't want to hurt you, but you got to give me something here, okay?
Appreciate it.
Anything else you'd like to tell me?
Yes, we covered everything between the
Okay.
city and myself.
All right, sir, I'm going to find the property in violation, issue an order number 11, Sherry, and impose daily fines that are going to be occurring at $250 a day, in order that you pay the $396.46 within 7 days,
We'll do that.
okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, stay in touch with the city. They want this repaired,
Yeah.
okay? And if something else happens, it's gonna get worse. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Sure, you got that? Okay, thank you.
And just to be clear, to make sure that Mr. Maman understands, the fines, your order today imposed the fines going back to July 19th. That's the first day that the fines started again. They had just stopped on July 9th. They start again July 19th and have been accruing now since then and continuing daily. I just want to make sure that we're clear.
So you're already August, September, October, November, 4 months of accruing fines, so please do something about this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in. Okay. All right. Well, I think we scared Mr. Earl away. Gwen, was that a hotel or? Okay.
It was, Mr. Maman has other businesses in the shores. He purchased that existing hotel and then, it wasn't immediately hit by the hurricanes, but thereafter.
They asked for 5 more minutes.
Okay. Well, I think
not
what we'll
sure
do
how
is we'll
that
take a
affects.
5-minute recess. I know we don't normally do that, but
Is that acceptable to our recording process? Because we may not be able to have us down and back up again in 5 minutes. That's okay?
I've had issues with it, so I don't want to stop it.
Okay, so we will be live on
just continue to
microphones,
run it.
but, yeah, but we'll be on recess for 5 minutes. Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Make sure it's
You don't remember?
I did a full celiac, yeah, it was interesting.
Okay, thank you, Sherry.
It was interesting. It was good. How was yours?
Cold. I drove to North Carolina, and my wife and daughter flew up there, and I had my daughter's birds with me. So I really couldn't do much except get gas and continue to go. I couldn't. So it was long coming back. The traffic was very snarled.
I bet.
But the damage up there is just amazing. Just, homes completely gutted and everything still on the front lawn awaiting pickup. I almost hit a bowling ball on my bicycle. I brought a bicycle, and I wasn't paying attention. There was this big blue bowling ball in the middle of the road, that rolled off a debris pile. So, and I couldn't get over where the damage was in relation to the water. It just was amazing how the distance and the height it must have been to have destroyed everything.
I have some friends in Asheville, and so I've been getting reports, and it's, some folks have said it'll never, ever be the same.
Yeah, yeah. And who buys flood insurance when you're on top of a hill,
Right.
you know?
I'm asking about the 26 day.
For a sign.
Sign and Sign Electric, they came in on the same day. It didn't show that it was incomplete and then changed, but that doesn't matter. Do you happen to? Doesn't matter, but that's
No,
the
I don't know
longest
why.
of all, and I don't think they are even accruing fines for.
And the sign was only to just repair it, right?
No, they put a whole new monument style sign. But I don't think.
It had to be,
Yeah,
there had to be something with it.
right. Yeah, I didn't know if something clicked you like, hey, they hadn't expedited. You know, because sometimes the permit text will say, I'm ready to move on to you, and then you say, oh, it's not.
Okay. Oh. Thank you, Sherry. It's amazing how the women in my life have to keep reminding me to do the most basic of things. Like my wife takes my keys from me as soon as I walk in and puts them in the bowl. Okay. We were at the Biltmore estate over Thanksgiving, and have you ever seen it? I said if I lived here, I would never ever find my keys. That'd be just the end of it. So, all right, so we're ready to begin again, and it is case CDEF 2022-02. The property owner is National Retail Properties Limited Partnership. Okay. And I believe we were at the point where you were asking me to put things into evidence, and I had asked Mr. Earl if he had seen them. He had not. I gave him time to go out and review the packet. Did you have sufficient time to review the packet?
Yes, Your Honor, and would like to reserve just the opportunity to walk through some of the exhibits with the witness from Dollar General, either during a cross-examination or during our presentation.
Okay. I'm going to accept them into evidence, and any questions that you have will go to the weight as opposed to admissibility.
Wonderful. Excellent,
Okay.
Justice House.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is a second compliance hearing for a case which began, basically it began in December of 2021, with an initial hearing taking place April of 2022, a first compliance hearing for non-compliance with the ordered compliance date of July 19th, 2022, and for which the property became fully compliant September 6th, 2024. Affidavits can be seen for non-compliance, compliance partial, and full compliance, beginning on page 4B-27 and again on 4B-48. Non-compliance resulted in 779 fined days at $250 per day, which is a total of $194,780 in accrued fines. I can't take a break, I guess. There are currently $234.62 in unpaid administrative fees, and we're requesting an additional $142.19 for today's meeting. That would bring administrative fees owed to a total of $376.81 if approved. I would like to briefly go through slides of the, not of all of the violations, for which there were 27, but focusing on the 13 violations for which fines accrued, as opposed to ones that were brought into compliance, many of which were, by the ordered compliance dates. Would also like to address that in briefly looking at some of the statements presented for reduction purposes. We don't like to wade into that in any way other than to say that I was alarmed when I saw in cases that permits had taken 180 days to be obtained. So I compared our permit records with each of the permits that were obtained since 2022 and including 2022. And I found that though that certainly may have happened from a contractor standpoint, we paid a contractor, he said he was gonna start pulling permits and then didn't have a permit for 180 days. From the time that we were submitted an application to the time that we turned around and said your permit is ready to be obtained, of the 5 permits presented in this packet, I have turnaround dates of 3 days, 6 days, 1 day, 1 day, and 1 day. And there are 3 other permits that you'll see in or may have seen in the listing of permits obtained for this property within this time frame that I didn't give you the specific permit details for because they didn't necessarily have any bearing on compliance and the case, but there were 3 others, and I looked at those too just to see what might have been being referenced. One of them was 26 days, that was the highest, and I'm not certain, but Steve may know why there was that kind of a time frame. That one wasn't obtained until over 30 days after it was ready to be obtained. And then the other 2 were 8 days and 2 days, and that was due to multiple people needing to review them. The vegetation permits go through the city planner in addition to the building official. So what I'm trying to say was even the 26-day delay for the sign issuance, that one did not result in any fines. They were able to bring that one into compliance on time. So of the 5 that may have, 6 days was the longest. And actually, it's really 5 days because we needed additional items submitted. They got them to us the next day, and then in the 5 days, we had a turnaround to say your permit's ready to obtain. So that doesn't mean there weren't other things taking place, but from a city standpoint, I was glad to see that we had not taken 180 days to issue a permit on our part.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you. I would like to focus on the 13 violations for which fines accrued with pictures and for explanations. And this is a listing of all of the permits above the red line that I just basically gave turnaround details for. We did have to rely for this property on the original approved site plan for plantings. So many had unfortunately died along the way from sprinkler breakage issues, et cetera, that we had to go back to the site plan to say, here's what's supposed to be there. And so that has been given along the way to multiple representatives for Dollar General and contractors for Dollar General using our review of it. Violation A did accrue fines for 35 days. This was exterior AC ducts were repaired without permits. The permit was obtained on August 10th of 2022 and final approved on August 24th of 2022, and that final approval is what triggered the stopping of the fines. If you look at the order, it does require, the findings of fact, conclusions of order, it does require that any permits that are required must be final approved to deem the violation compliant. So that was 35 days worth. And any of these permits referenced on these slides and in this conversation are available in the packet.
Okay.
Violation C, approved fines. I have 2 slides for violation C. Required landscape plants have died in places along all sides of the property. Some have not been removed. None have been replaced. That was the original violation, the way that it read. You can see briefly, I've just spotlighted 2 of the areas. You can see in the upper left-hand picture, the azaleas, pretty clear to see in the upper left picture. That was at installation, May of 2011. At the initial inspection time, the one with the orange bar, January 4th, 2022, you can see that the azaleas are not present. You can see a re-inspect picture on July 20th, 2022 of them not being present. I'm sorry, and that says 2022 at the top, but you can see at the bottom the picture was taken July 5th, 2024, and that by that point, looks like there's one little scraggly azalea there, but they have not been fully replaced. And then follow-up inspection September 6th, 2024 shows that they are between that July 20th, that's just wrong, sorry, between July 5th, 2024 and September 6th, 2024, those azaleas were replaced. That's just one example. Another example of the same violation, this is along the east property line, the upper left-hand corner, that was upon installation. You can see the plants behind, you can see the mulch, and then you can see grassy area in the front, and some other plants still growing in front of those palms. Here is a picture of that same area, July 5th, 2024, where a couple of plants have been replaced, but still not to original levels. And then you can see the re-inspect picture on September 6th, 2024. You also do see that particular date they were trimming palms, and you can see some of that palm frond pile behind there, but they were actively working on that. That wasn't something that somebody had left there. Violations D and AA, cut palm stump remains on north side of the building, not replaced. Cut palm stump remains on north side of the building, not replaced. Those were cited twice. That was cited twice just because it was under different codes. You can see the palm stump the way that it was. Follow-up inspection July 20th, 2022, showing that it's not placed. And then Noelle Eaton signed off on this tree being replanted at her last inspection of this landscaping. That took place on November 17th, 2023. I can't point to a palm that was specifically added and replaced. I don't know where it is, but I will say that one of our staff members signed off that it was placed, and I'm not going to challenge that.
Okay.
But on her signing off, that resulted in.
Glad you said that, because I don't see the tree either.
I can't point to one
Okay.
specific tree that was replaced, but I'm not going to challenge a staff member saying, yep, they've got everything that they need. And it may have been that on total count, there was another tree installed elsewhere. I can't point to it, but she counted and she determined that it was acceptable.
If they say it's fine, it's fine.
Indeed. Violation F, outdoor storage of box carts, racks, and pallets west of the building. You can see the upper left-hand picture where it started. You have the big white dumpster enclosure. Just to the right of that, you have some of the racks that I'm talking about, and pallets are sometimes leaning up against the building. Multiple follow-up inspections are just giving you examples of the pallets and the mostly just the racks being left out again and again. This September 6th date was the first time that I have driven by and not seen any pallets, any racks, anything in that area, so that was great. And I know that they've been focused on it pretty heavily. So that was the listed compliance date there. At the bottom right picture, you see a piece of equipment there. That's not something that's been left. Again, on September 6th, they were actively trimming the tall Washingtonian palms. The dead frondage was the reason that this whole case got started. So that, them trimming that again and trimming all the dead fronds that had grown in that time period was what ultimately allowed this property to be deemed compliant, in addition to other steps taken on September 4th and September 6th. Violation G, loose trash and debris in places on north side of the building. Hard to show you debris, but you can see very clearly the bottom left picture. That's an example of what's frequently seen there. Dollar General uses yellow bags, and on that north side of the property, yellow bags are frequently in that area. I will say that when I went on September 6th, I was told it was good, and it was good. I didn't see trash and debris anywhere, and I believe that they've been focusing on that specifically, which is great. Violation K, metal roof sheets are rusted in places. There's a picture back in 2022. The picture that I'm showing you was of what it looks like without the rust. It was replaced, but what triggered final violation, final compliance for this violation was that the permit for the roof replacement repairs was final approved on June 5th of 2024. You can see they obtained that March 13th, 2024, and then they had 2 progress inspections and then final approval on June 5th. Violations L and P, exterior AC ducts rusted and discolored by mold in places, and exterior AC ducts which have rusted through in places. Picture of where it was when it started, and that's just one example. There were multiple issues like this in a row. They have multiple AC units and ducts. And the final approval for that permit to rectify that issue was took place on August 24th, 2022, so that only resulted in 35 fined days. Violation O, the shutters and the louvers broken in places on dormers in the building. The final approval for the permit to rectify that took place on June 5th of 2024 after getting that permit March 13th of the same year. Violation Q, shutters and louvers broken in places on dormers and building. Again, permit obtained March 13th of 2024, final approved June 5th, 2024 for 686 fined days. What happened in this picture down below was the dormers and cupolas were damaged. They had not rectified them, and then one day I came in and saw that they had pulled them off without permits. So for a building that's already dealing with roof leaks, the general manager tells me, you know, when I speak to her, what she's got going on, what she's dealing with, and they were already dealing with roof leaks. Now they've pulled off these elements that were placed and sealed, leaving either holes or sealing them, but without a permit, there's no way to determine that. So that didn't bring that into the violation into compliance because they hadn't gotten a permit to remove them and properly seal the roof. When I reached out about that, I was told that unfortunately they should not have removed them. It was part of a contract that doesn't have anything to do with the city that those dormers and cupolas be placed. So then the plan shifted to replacing them again rather than pulling the permit to seal off this roof and fix it.
In your conversation with the general manager, is she responsible for maintaining the building, or is there some other entity that takes care of the physical plant for Dollar General?
So there have been 2 general managers that I've spoken with throughout the course of this case, Laura, who retired, and then Bonnie, who is currently the general manager there. And I don't know the specifics of exactly who is responsible for what, and nor is it our responsibility to know that. I do know that when it comes to cleaning up the debris around the building, that would be something that she takes on with her staff. But when it comes to the roof, what I have always understood was that it was not in her hands to rectify.
Okay.
Whether it's the property owner who does it or some other entity in between her and the property owner, that's not for the city to necessarily know and get involved in.
Okay, I'll have questions for Mr. Earl about that.
Violation S, soffit falling and missing in places on dormers, and these are just, again, final approval, stop the fines for the permit that was required to rectify those issues, and resulted, and that did not happen until June 5th, 2024, resulting in 686 fined days. Violation B, multiple white lampshades rusted around the building. Those are pictures earlier on of how bad some of the lamps, how rusted some of the lamps had become, and follow-up inspections you can see at the bottom. What stopped the, or brought that violation into compliance was the final approved electrical permit, May 20th, 2024. That resulted in 670 fined days. Violation X, this was not a fined issue, but became compliant again. It was one of the violations that was rectified fairly early on within the ordered time frame allowed, but because the trimming had not occurred again, I let them know after that July 5th inspection that they had the dead fronds again and needed to go back out and trim, which they did, and happened to be on that same September 6th date that I was able to observe full compliance. And you can see in the pile with the picture kind of in the middle right that they're actively pulling those dead fronds down that day. And they, when I followed up later on my way home, they had removed them all. So.
Certainly look a lot better.
Well, if you'll recall, the challenge was the property that you can see to the south in the upper left-hand picture. I was writing them for a number of violations, but one of theirs was that they always had palm fronds scattered all over their property, and I looked and they don't have palms, and so it's kind of like, wait, and that's what caused me to look at Dollar General. And
is that the car wash?
it is.
Okay.
Yes. The requested order would be at his honor's discretion, either in order number 12, reducing or resizing the lien, or order number 13. Basically, these two are similar. The only difference is that order number 12 has a specific payment deadline included, and order number 13 does not. So there are times that reducing the amount of a fine makes sense because of all of the actions taken, maybe that weren't the responsibility of the property owner at all. And there are other times that it's appropriate that it be offered for a limited time. And that's not something that the city has a preference in this case, having not heard all of the evidence or evaluated all of the.
Right. We've done that before.
And that's not a request that I'm asking one way or the other. It depends, and it's at your discretion.
Okay.
I would like to call one witness.
Second,
Yeah,
subject to cross-examination.
absolutely.
Mr. Earl, any questions for Ms. Herstein?
I suppose, Ms. Herstein, you had mentioned the specific permits, and
I'm sorry. Would you mind coming to the microphone?
Of course.
Thanks.
Sorry, get us on the record.
Believe it or not, we actually have people that watch this at home.
Look at
And
that.
so
Tuned
this is
in
your,
right now for
this
some
is your
foreign
opportunity
action.
to get discovered.
There we go.
Okay.
On a billboard in the next couple weeks, we'll know it was from today. So, but I believe, Madam Inspector, when you're getting into the permit issue specifically and how long it took to pull permits, I'm not familiar with the specific page or document within the evidence referencing that 180 days. I want to apologize to the extent that was made of saying it was 180 days turnaround, and to the extent that was a dig at the city, that wasn't meant at all, and that's certainly unreasonable. And I appreciate your diligence in going through and walking the court through those specific days and the different turnarounds, say 6 days, 2 days, and going through that. I suppose my only question would be, in the days that were conceded on the turnaround, have those days been factored into the 779 days requested?
No, thank you for the question, but those days are factored into the initial time frame given to the respondent to correct, because knowing that respondents are going to need to apply for permits and obtain permits to make specific corrections, that doesn't happen in a vacuum. And so when we say we request 3 months or 2 months or whatever time frame, that is with the understanding that they're going to need to get permits, which was why when I saw the 180 days and 120 days, it was alarming, and I wanted to check to make sure that we were not part of a problem.
Okay. And then from the date of initial inspection, which I believe was April 2022, through July 2022, you mentioned that several violations had been fixed by the store. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you remember what some of those violations that were fixed and repaired, what some of those were?
Sure, and I can direct you specifically, and His Honor specifically, to, in the packet, page 4B-3 and 4. All of the violations that are not, that don't have their letter in bold, for example, when you look at the bottom half of the page, A is bold, it accrued fines for 35 days. B, on the same page, accrued fines 0 days, no fines at all. So B, E, H, and I on that page did not accrue fines. And then on page B-4, N, R, T, U, W, Y, and Z did not accrue fines. And they range, there are all sorts of different fines, things that, one of them was as simple as a vine climbing the building, but others were more involved and required permits and rectification and were fixed, like the sign, the dilapidated sign as an example, like shutters and underlayment broken and missing from south dormers. That particular issue was rectified. An electrical panel box was covered with rust, and they got out and they did a great job of painting that, sanding it down properly and painting that over. So they're available here. I don't think you want me to go through them.
No, that's very helpful and very helpful for the court. Would it be fair to characterize it that between that initial inspection, when these violations were raised, we were chopping violations down, if you will, from, say, 27 violations to 13 at the time of that next follow-up hearing?
Well, obviously some were rectified, yes. And that's about all I can say. As far as steady forward progress, I'm not sure that that was achieved throughout the entire 779 days. But I don't know what has gone on in the offices and in the, I don't understand the process. I do know that I've talked with different folks from Dollar General and responsible for the property along the way, and they've changed. That may have had something to do with it.
From July of 2022 through September of 2024, how many phone calls would you estimate you had with representatives from Dollar General?
Sometimes for smaller amounts of calls and emails, I'll include all of those in the packet, but I did state in the packet on page, in summary, possibly 4B10. From August 18th, 2022 to September 6th, 2024, I did basically a summary. There were at least 31 call threads, not just calls, but call threads I reached out and someone responded, and then there may have been multiple responses. Some of those were repetitive and giving people information that I had provided previously, and some were not. Some were not at all repetitive, but, and I state also on that page, no fewer than 109 emails, and that was a quick count as to every email that I had moved into the file. I didn't do a full search to see if there were others. So at a minimum, there were that many emails. Some were from me saying, here's what I'm seeing, still not done, and some were from representatives reaching out and asking questions.
Is it fair to say that that communication that you mentioned, the call threads and the over 100 emails, was communication occurring consistently with Dollar General over that time?
I would have to characterize it more as a stop-start.
Can you remember any specific time frame where things were stalled or things were stopped that, you know, maybe you were frustrated, that you were wondering why more progress isn't occurring?
Sure. Before Dennis Holler, who has been involved and is still involved, and Kendrick Holiday, who's here with you today, before they were involved, there were more times of wondering what was taking place. Yes.
Can you recall specific months or specific chunks of time within the life of the violation that you remember things were specifically stalled for a while?
I would really have to go through and sort of analyze my follow-up, which is precisely why I do this, if somebody wanted to do that. But I haven't. I'd hate to, without taking a couple minutes to look through, you could see gaps in dates.
And I believe it kind of came up, and I'm sure the court will ask me about it in my presentation, but is your understanding that Dollar General is a tenant at this property?
It is my understanding, but again, we don't ask for deeds or not deeds, we don't ask for leases, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
We don't ask for that kind of document. It's really not the kind of thing that we want to wade into to try to contact, these folks for this amount of activity that we're looking for and these other folks. It's really the property owner's responsibility through their own documentation and understanding of who's responsible for what to handle that, which is why this goes to the property owner.
And so with your understanding that Dollar General is a tenant, you haven't seen the lease relationship between Dollar General and its landlords?
No, and it's not our business to do that. It is hopefully every landlord, if anybody's watching this, hopefully every landlord has some kind of a provision and mechanism through which the tenant's responsibilities are addressed, and they have teeth to enforce themselves.
I know during your presentation we talked specifically about some of the violations having to do with the pallets that were outside of the Dollar General store, as well as the debris that was outside of the store. Is it fair to say that those sort of materials, pallets and debris, those violations are most the responsibility of the tenant because they control those things?
Again, without wading into any lease agreement, I can't say for sure, but I can say that even if it is the tenant's responsibility, the landlord is who our code enforcement process works through. It is the landowner's responsibility to address violations on his or her property.
And speaking to the pallets and debris specifically, I know during your presentation you mentioned that you recognize that the company or the store was giving real focus to those issues and had prioritized them, or I forget your wording exactly, but were paying attention to them and had done a good job addressing them ultimately. Is that
most
reasonable?
recently? I would say as of September 6th. When I went that day, I was hard-pressed to find any debris on the ground. So it was clear, because that was the first time that I could say fantastic, it was clear that at least that day, and then at times since, that has improved, yes.
And just to that debris issue, and His Honor caught it on the photo. Are you aware that there's a car wash located kind of right next to that Dollar General?
I'm very aware.
And that, have you ever seen, or is it reasonable to suspect that possibly some, car wash type debris, people cleaning out their trash or something like that could wade over into the debris?
I would have to say that at least in the last couple of years, no, because the car wash has been closed with no tenant there. The car wash mechanics are not operational as far as I know. There are no tenants there. So I would have to say I don't think so.
Okay. Specifically talking about that debris violation, I know when you were showing the court, you said it's a little hard to see the debris. Is it fair to say that would be because it was minor?
I wouldn't say it was minor. If it was a minor one piece, I would not have even taken a picture of it, and it would not have ended up on the notice of violation. I would not say it was minor. I would say that the fact that I went and re-inspected multiple times during the course of this 2+ years, and the first time that I saw no debris on the property was September 6th of this year, I have to say it's not minor. It's not enough that people are calling to complain about it, but when I'm there looking at other obvious violations, it was clearly in violation.
How many total representatives from Dollar General have you spoken with, emailed, spoke over the phone with over the life of this violation?
Again, I mean, the people with whom I've spoken, I've documented their names so that I could follow up and have a memory of. I'd be guessing. I haven't analyzed it. Generally, I speak with the general manager. There are plenty of times, like if there's signage or something that they have clearly installed, I'll walk in and say, hey, did you know you don't have a permit for that sign? And they'll go, oh, let's take it down. So there are times I try to get compliance through the business. In this case, it was broader.
What are some of the titles of folks you've engaged with at Dollar General, those representatives? I know you've talked about your relationship with the two general managers that were actually at the store. Have you also dealt with corporate representatives as well?
There was one interaction regarding a mailing that somebody called about, and I'd have to look in it's here. They called about it a couple months after a hearing and said, just following up with this, and I let them know where it stood. But that's not somebody I've had any repeated interaction with. It was not someone who I needed to have repeated interaction with. Basically, a piece of information had been misrouted, I would say, within the company, and someone in accounts payable had ended up with not a fees to pay or anything like that, but a notice of hearing.
So apart from that particular instance with the accounts payable rep and the two general managers, have you spoken, for example, to Mr. Kendrick Holliday?
Yes, I have.
What other members of his team have you dealt with that you remember, just off the top of your head?
Dennis Holler comes to mind because those are the two lately with whom I've spoken the most.
And so when we talk about those emails and calls, is it fair to say that the bulk of those would have occurred with Mr. Kendrick and that gentleman that you just mentioned, or would it have been with the general managers? How did that, how did that all break
The
down?
majority of my conversations have been through the property owner and representatives. Again, the general manager has limited ability to do anything. I would only go to the general manager to speak about, like a sign, temporary sign that was placed without a permit, something like that, that they may have been responsible for. But I have served notice because the Florida statutes allow me to do that. To the manager or the responsible party at a business, I can serve notice in that way. And they always tell me, great, I know right where to send this. And there hasn't been a lack of involvement by people at the property owner level. They have been aware of hearings as far as they have been present, have communicated about. So
And
that
when you're
line of, I'm sorry, maybe you wanted me to stop, but that line of, the chain of information going to the owner has seemed to be clear.
And when you say the property owner, that's referring to Dollar General, right?
The property owner. The specific property owner, I don't believe is Dollar General.
You're talking about the landlord.
The property owner, not the business owner.
How do you define property owner?
When you look at the property appraiser's website, it shows you who the property owner is. You can look at a deed, you can look at and those are all available through the property appraiser's website.
Okay, and so that property owner here is not Dollar General, right? That would
Correct.
be National Retail Properties.
Correct.
How many total emails have you had with National Retail Properties?
The majority of these emails have been with representatives for the property owner as opposed to Dollar General individuals, the majority of them. I can't give you a number, I don't know for sure. Because I mean, a lot of times I'm dealing with, it seems they're intermediaries. Early on, and I even put it in the follow-up when it happened, I said, can I please have one representative for the property owner? Because I'm repeating myself, the same things again and again, and it never seems to change anything. I'd love to have one person responsible for disseminating this information. And that didn't happen at that time, but it has happened since when Dennis Holler and Kendrick got involved. But that didn't happen then.
And is your understanding that Dennis and Kendrick are from Dollar General, the tenant on the property, not the property owner?
Frankly, I don't know. Okay, it's in the packet. If we look at an email that I've received from one of those individuals, I can answer that question. And again,
Mr. Earl, I hate to interrupt you, but do you represent National Retail Properties Limited Partnership?
No, Your Honor, I do not. I represent Dollar General, the tenant in the building. And
Then I think we have a problem.
I think we do too. I'm sorry, Your Honor.
I may be misspeaking, Your Honor, and I believe Mr. Kendrick has that authorization for me to speak on behalf of the landlord himself. I may be misspeaking to my understanding of my attorney-client relationship, Judge, but I believe that I have standing and authorization to speak on behalf of the landlord as well today, Judge. So I may have misspoken there.
May I ask to see that authorization? Because they offered it before, knowing that this gentleman was an attorney. We don't generally.
Right, generally, we just assume that you are representing the correct party. Look, between you and I, Florida Bar, not a big fan. I don't want to see you get in trouble with them.
I would certainly like to
More than
avoid that, Judge.
anything
I would promise you I'm not
else here.
trying to be sneaky. in any
Okay.
way.
May I present this? I think this will clear things up.
Yeah, I want to make sure that you're representing the correct party and
Yes,
interest.
Judge, and we did attempt to submit this, but it was sort of,
See
It was
it?
this morning.
I apologize. So if it was a misunderstanding of I needed to put this in, and we basically agreed, no, I'm an attorney, so it's okay. But I think that
And that
is
was-
hopefully the,
Who is NNN REIT LP?
That's the changed name from the LP that's listed here, and you will get a change of name form. If we were to pull up the property appraiser, the Sunbiz and property appraiser, we would see that information.
Give me 1 second.
of course, Your Honor, and I apologize for any misstatements or,
It's quite all right, but what I don't want to happen is we're dealing with an awful lot of money. The city is requesting $195,000. I fine National Retail Properties LP $195,000, and then they say, wait a second, we never got our day in court. And then they'll ask you what in the world you were doing here representing somebody other than them, and we don't want that to happen. All right. I see on May 4th, 2023, National Retail Properties LP changed their name to the very catchy NNN REIT LP. So, same entity. And I appreciate having this. And Mr. Earl, you are confident that you represent the property owner?
I am, Your Honor.
Okay. Again, if there's any doubt, I will give you a continuance to make sure that your scope of representation is what you think it is.
Judge, is it possible to, instead of ask for a continuance, even 5 or 10 minutes to go and achieve that verification out in the hall, and just make sure that we are clear and kosher as we've gotten into quite a bit?
Absolutely.
Just to make sure that we're all feeling comfortable and that anything that happens today is a nice record for everybody.
Well,
Would that be okay, Madam Inspector? I promise I'll be.
Absolutely.
Yep. Thank you, Your Honor.
10-minute recess.
I'll be right back. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I offer that to the city clerk?
Yes, please. Excuse me 1 second. I want to get that next.
I'm sorry?
We'll be right back. You know, they say in baseball you watch because you know it's one of those stuff that's never seen before. I didn't expect this to happen today, but when he started talking, well,
You can try all you want. The fact that that authorization has the owner's name, I mean, I don't, unless it
well, based upon the conversation I sort of overheard, I don't think he represents the owner.
But that's what that authorization letter says.
Right. But I got the gut feeling that the property owner doesn't quite understand the stakes that are I want to say being played for, but of what's going on here. It's $195,000 is real money.
2.5 years is a real long time.
Oh, I agree.
And then also, part of this case, but cupola blown off in the last storm, and it's sitting in the parking lot next to
Nope,
them.
they picked it up because I said, really? Really?
They still have to get a permit and reinstall it, because it's gonna
I
be a
know,
deed
they're working
violation.
on it, they're working on it. Because they know that it's a repeat.
Well, no, because it's a new owner now.
It's not a new owner.
Name change, but name change is a no owner.
It's not a new owner.
Well, Gwen, if you get $195,000, they should name the new fire truck after you.
That's not gonna happen. It's not what we're even asking for.
Talk like the
We're
first team
bringing it to
does
you to decide what the right, we are
Well, I
not.
have named fire trucks.
You could have, yeah, you could name it. What would you name a fire truck? You'd
Well,
first have to
Gwen is
decide
what
if
we
it
call
were a
it.
female or a male. No, some fire trucks are male.
All machines
I'm
are.
trying to take some.
I don't, that's true, says a male, says a male. Some are not, especially some boats are males.
So. Generate just. It's 10:30. So I'm gonna have to multitask.
He said he needs about 5 more minutes to interview.
Okay.
Second voicemail. Let me listen back. I said 2-second voicemail. I said we don't need to listen to that.
gets you the $22.50, and if you just give that to them at the desk, the second floor, right, that's for copies. And then this is the code enforcement administrative fees, and basically it's either gonna be $234.62 for all of this, or it's gonna be $376.81 for all of this plus that, so I'll cross out whatever doesn't work, and then I'll hand it to you. Great.
Thank you.
There is a $2 fee if you pay by
Regard.
credit card. If they have to put you on one transaction, I don't think they do, but they might think they do, then you would have to pay the, yeah, and it's a $2 minimum, it's actually 3.25%. So, if you wanted to send a check, you could, to do it differently. Okay.
I'll take another month for you for the check, so.
I'm not saying anything. trying to make sure he's not in there paying, doesn't know the amount. Okay, all right, thanks. Pinchas? Thanks.
I've never seen her over there.
Well,
Okay, Judge. A lot of frantic phone calls and making sure that everything is okay. But yes, Judge, I can say that my attorney-client relationship is really with the tenant here, given the contractual relationship that exists between the tenant and the property owner, but that I was brought onto this case through notice from the property owner about this, and that they provided who I think of, Judge, and who I spoke to the court as of my client with that authorization form. That was provided actually directly to Mr. Kendrick, showing the notice that's there that the property owner in this case knows exactly where I am and that I'm here advocating for them, understanding that they're on the hook. And then there's a relationship between that owner with Mr. Kendrick's employer, Dollar General.
okay, I wanted to make sure you were in good standing.
Thank you, Judge, very much. And I apologize for any misspeaking and near scares or heart attacks, but I think we're in good shape.
Okay, please proceed.
You can ask me a question if I knew who Mr. Kendrick worked for, and at the bottom of his emails, it very clearly says Dollar General.
Okay, and I suppose the general thrust of my questioning was what percentage of your communications have been with Dollar General, the tenant, versus the property owner at the property?
I really can't just take a guess. Like, I had to look at whether or not he was, had to look that up, whether he was with the tenant or with the property owner. I've had dealings with both, representatives of both.
Is it fair that you had dealings with representatives of both throughout the life of the violation, 2022 into 2024?
More recently, they've been with, as I said, Kendrick with Dollar General and Dennis with Dollar General.
That was the end of my question.
Okay. Do you have anything that you'd like to say in follow-up?
Yes.
yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, not you.
Chomping
Ms.
at the bit,
Herstein.
of course.
I don't, Your Honor.
Okay, do you have any other witnesses?
I do.
Okay. Please call your next witness.
If building official Edmonds could come up to the podium, please.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Ms. Herstein, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please state your name, position, how long you've been with the city.
Steve Edmonds, I'm the building official here. I've been with the city 21 years. Going on 21.
Thank you, Steve. And would you briefly describe your involvement with this property?
I was the one that did plan reviews and inspections for this project, actually.
All of the code enforcement inspections or the permit?
The building inspections for the sign, the cupolas, the repairs that they did that required building permits.
Thank you. And are the documents which have been introduced to the record today, are they true and accurate to those you created, for any that you did create?
Yes.
Okay. And do the events as they've been presented by the city represent a true and accurate account of your understanding of the facts of this case?
Yes, they do.
Thank you. And is there any information you'd like to clarify or add to assist the special magistrate with his determinations today?
No, not at this time.
Thank you.
I do have one question. Mr. Edmonds, the light covers that were rusted, those required an electrical permit? Why and how?
By code, the code says if you alter, repair, or replace, sometimes some jurisdictions will not enforce changing out of a light fixture, but we do.
Okay.
Because it is in the code, because it says if you alter, repair, replace, so obviously you're going to be in one of those conditions, whether you're replacing it, you're fixing it or altering it, and because they are UL listed, and so we have to verify that the light that's going back up there is another exterior UL listed light.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Earl, do you have any questions for Mr. Edmonds?
No, Your Honor. No, Mr.
thank you very much. Ms. Herstein, anything additional?
No, this time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Earl, it's your turn. Let me help you out, because we've had extensive recesses here. Violation C is 779 days. It's page 4B-3. B-3.
Okay, yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you see, violation C, 779 days.
I do, Your Honor.
Okay, that's the longest. If you look at A, it says 35 days. 35 days is subsumed in the 779. So if you successfully knock out a day out of the 35, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
If you look at F and G, the debris,
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm not as concerned with that because that's the tenant's behavior, not the owner of the building's behavior. Doesn't mean I'm excusing it, but I'm interested in your direct controllable events.
Understood.
Help you out?
Very much so, Judge.
Okay? Please proceed.
Judge, I want to start off by saying I'm not coming into court indignant on behalf of any party here. There is certainly an admission that feet were dragged here and that more timely diligence could have been exercised by both the landlord and the tenant, to the extent Madam Inspector testified that she dealt with representatives of both. To me, Your Honor, it sounded like a little bit of frustration of trying to find out who's really calling the shots here. You know, the inspector's duty, of course, is to the property owner. That's how I'm going to approach, the violations. But maybe the property owner's not giving you as better communication as the tenant, so you tend to communicate with them and try ultimately to get things done. To the extent, Judge, I want to speak about the first hearing that occurred. There were 27 violations flagged, and it was clear back in April of 2022 that we were dealing with a problematic store. 27 violations, we're into the double AAs in the alphabet. So there were 90 days that were granted, and I wasn't a part of the arguments or the granting of those 90 days, but it was clear that at that time there was a lot of violations to address. I would make an argument to the court that 90 days was a pretty tight timeline. 90 days, as Your Honor I'm sure knows in litigation, it can just fly by like that. And in that first 90 days, I think the testimony here today has shown that violations were coming down. At least the lower hanging fruit was getting knocked off. Things like electrical box rusting, that was all getting worked out, to where as the fines started accruing, we were really looking at 13 key violations that needed to be addressed from thereafter. And I want to point the court to the collective exhibit 3 that was presented both to Madam Inspector as well as to the court to discuss some of the diligence that both the landlord and the tenant were undertaking throughout 2022, a little bit less in 2023, and I'll address that specifically, Judge, but then as well in 2024. And as Madam Inspector testified, Judge, instead of looking at this more as 779 days where folks were sitting around on their hands and not getting things done, there were flurries of activity, which is clearly represented by both the call log submitted by Madam Inspector, the emails that were exchanged, and this timeline as well, where we can see diligent work being done even into that time frame after August of 2022, when fines were starting to accrue. So if you look specifically, Judge, at this timeline here, and I'm not sure how the evidentiary issues work here, Judge, but that everything here has been admitted, so I'm just walking the court through an admitted exhibit is my understanding, that in, for example, August of 2022, we're looking at landscaping issues, contractors are being dispatched. Those exterior lights issues that the court flagged, those are being looked at in September of 2022. We've got entries there kind of explaining activity and work that's being done to address violations. effectively to show the court that good faith diligence was being exercised throughout 2022. The violation certainly could have been addressed with more diligence, but we're trying to show the court that those days that are accruing, we recognize them, and that there's an active work being done to get things moving. Now, looking at the timelines, there's a landscaping exhibit that was presented, as well as a roofing exhibit that was presented. If you pay really close attention and kind of take an hour looking at all the evidence that's in there, Judge, I'll be honest, coming into the file a little bit after the fact and after things have happened, I see some gaps in 2023. It looks like in 2023, that start and stop that Madam Inspector testified to, we were stopped for a lot of 2023. In fact, looking at the timelines, Judge, it looks like from January of 2023 through July of 2023, things fell through the cracks, and that ultimately falls on the property owner. And so that's a concession here, that from January 2023 to July of 2023, when there's a conference call held with Madam Inspector, it looks like we were in one of those stop periods. And frankly, Judge, we're accepting of those fines that accrued during that period. And that's 8 months that, to me, looking at it from the outside, not enough was being done in that early part of 2023. There's not any excuse that I can tie back to that's weather related, that's pulling permits and contractor hassles. You know, we simply don't have entries from that time period.
Just to be clear, is this what you're referring to?
That is a part of it, Judge, actually, but more specifically, I'm looking at Composite Exhibit 3. It starts, or Collected Exhibit 3. The first timeline I'm referring to is Divisions, Landscaping, Exterior Building Repair.
Okay.
So that
would be May 2nd, 2022.
That's exactly the page
Okay.
I'm referencing, Judge, and kind of down below there, you see these post violation accruing period efforts that are getting made. For example, I was referencing September and October of 2022. You know, it's not like things just were ignored after that order came in and the fines are accruing and nothing's getting done. There's actual work that's being dispatched. Vendors are being sent out. The landscaping issue in particular is given nice focus throughout 2022. And then as we return, following sort of, I'm imagining as I look back at this file, Judge, that the July conference call, which is referenced in the roofing timeline, which is the next timeline presented in that packet about 3 pages later, it's the building and roofing permit timeline. You'll see Tuesday, July 18th, there was a conference call with Madam Inspector. On almost both timelines, it seems like things get going again, and that there's an orchestration of how are we going to address the landscaping issues that are still there, how are we going to address the roofing issues that are present. I also want to speak to, and I'll be calling Mr. Kendrick Holliday to the stand to address some of the specific violations, but there were weather-related events during the course of the 2022 to 2024 incident. Most particularly, Judge, Hurricane Ian was in October of 2022, right at the heart of the violations occurring here. And in that timeline that Your Honor first referenced, Dollar General, and specifically, they were the constructor of this particular timeline, they point out that on average, the hurricane events that occurred cost them about 2 weeks in how they were able to handle different situations that arose from that. But I know, looking back through the file, it was that October 2022 Hurricane Ian that really backtracked them, because at that point, everyone's kind of conceding at 2022, we're making good progress, we're chopping down violations, we've got it from 27 to 13, and we've got evidence that work's being done. Well, things sort of slow up after that. And we see photos that were put into evidence, for example, of the shutters, which it's my understanding those were actually re-damaged through a hurricane after having gotten fixed. So as violations are being addressed from the past, technically, Judge, I hate to say this, but new violations are propping up with the weather-related events as they're trying to keep up, especially with the roof and the roofing issues. If I can speak to that a little bit, and I don't necessarily mean this to make an argument as to deducting specific delays, but we do have a landlord-tenant relationship that's going on here, and that automatically creates layers of friction and communication. Whose responsibility is it actually to be calling out these vendors, point me to the specific lease provision? You can imagine the parties taking time and friction to get things done. So that was a layer of problems already there. And that was kind of the point that I was trying to make in my testimony of Madam Inspector. But Judge, looking at things, it really looks like that start periods that Madam Inspector talked about were occurring both before January of 2023 and then after July of 2023. where it's the respondent's position in this case that beginning from those timelines, July 2023 after, and then from the time of the imposed fine up to January of 2023, reasonable good faith diligence was being exercised to address these violations and certain violations that were actually fixed and were agreed to have been knocked off. Addressing the permits in particular, I want to put on the record that there's no allegation, and to the extent maybe it was a misstatement that it took 180 days to get a permit, Judge. That's not the position that's being taken. But if anyone's done any contracting work, say trying to get an addition done on a garage, it takes a lot of time from when the contractor gets the deal signed and the contractor's saying, all right, I just got to go pull those permits. You know, it's not Dollar General or the landlord or the property owner that can actually force them to do that work. We dealt with supply chain issues throughout 2022 and 2023, where, for example, roofing materials that were needed in, we got quoted on an 8 to 10 week material time, given the supply chains that these contractors are facing. So we finally get these permits done, and I think that may have been the 180 days or where that possibly came from, I'm not sure. But I believe any 180 days would have been attributed to contractor issues and the amount of folks that needed to get dispatched out to this property. From the
Mr. Earl, do you have any correspondence between your client and the city, informing the city of these delays?
No, Your Honor, I do not. I do not have it as to present today. I would rely on the testimony that was given that over 100 emails were exchanged with over 30 call threads throughout the life of the violation, presumably where these were getting relayed. And to the extent there was a deficiency in my questioning with Madam Inspector, that's on me. But it appeared to me through the testimony that was offered, there was consistent communication through that time where calls and emails were getting exchanged, presumably saying, here's what we're trying to do, and here are our good faith efforts.
Well, unfortunately, I do not have the benefit of any of that content.
Yes, Your Honor, and I would like to perhaps call Mr. Kendrick Holliday to the stand to offer his testimony of his involvement with the city here and maybe walk through some of the specific violations as well. Okay. Would that be acceptable, Judge?
Whatever you would like to do.
How do we usually do it, Judge? Is it okay if Mr. Holliday stands right next to me and I can kind of talk with him?
Sure. We don't have a witness box here. Mr. Holliday, would you mind raising your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Earl, I never swear attorneys because when you took your oath, I imagine it stuck, so,
Yes, Judge.
okay?
Mr. Holliday, please just introduce yourself to the court with your name and job title.
My name is Kendrick Holliday, work for Dollar General, obviously, and my title is the field senior manager for maintenance.
Okay.
And where is your work based out of, sir?
I have the entire southeast part of the country, and I'm located in Memphis, Tennessee.
And where?
I'm located in Memphis, Tennessee, but I have the
Oh,
entire
okay.
southeast part of the
I
country.
didn't hear that part.
And so did you fly from Memphis, Tennessee to Daytona Shores to be here for today's hearing?
Yes, sir.
When is the last time you visited this store?
Actually, yesterday.
And what did you observe in your visit yesterday to the store?
Just from damages still, just from the recent Hurricane Milton. It was after, obviously, we've gotten clearance from the violations that we're dealing with now. But there are some roofing issues again with them, also with the cupolas and dormants. The electrical lamps that's on the exterior as well. Quite a few of those need to be replaced, and also a downspout. That's already being worked on through Dennis Holler, who's been working on the roof for the last couple of years. And then also landscaping. I have a landscaper going out there actually today and for the next couple of days because a lot of palm trees need to be trimmed again, and then a couple of those azaleas are leaning over.
And how is this store on your radar as a part of your job? Will you be keeping track of it going forward, and do you keep track of it now?
Yes, actually, I actually deal with with Dennis and with DNP, or Divisions, who's actually over the landscaping. We talk at least once a month reference to the property now, and I'm just going to continue to do that, for the next couple of years, just so we don't cross those violations again.
And when did you first come into contact with Madam Inspector? I may mispronounce this. Herstein?
Christine?
Madam Herstein.
I believe it was roughly July 2023.
And how many total, this is a rough estimate, how many total emails would you guess you've exchanged with Madam Herstein?
Maybe about between 10 to 15 emails.
And have you been speaking with her about issues on this store starting from July 2023, I believe you said, through, say, the present?
Yes, sir.
Why did you first come on and start speaking to the inspector in July 2023?
I recently started my role, so I kind of took over the violations and trying to pick up where we left off and trying to figure out where that 8-month gap in, where that happened and getting it taken care of. But that's what I ended up getting involved in at that point.
And you mentioned that 8-month gap, when you kind of came on the scene in July 2023, what were you seeing as you take on the file?
At that point, it was still quite a few landscaping. We struggled with the equipment and trash from the exterior. A lot of trash was blown outside of the little bit of things that was coming from the rotainers that we had, that cardboard and stuff was blowing out of it. And then just the landscaping itself and also the roof.
And you spoke to it a little bit in your testimony, but going forward, what are the actions Dollar General specifically will be taking to stay in compliance at the store?
I'm going to follow up with the Bunny, which is the current store manager, and then also still follow up with my vendors, making sure that they're looking like their landscapers are going out there looking at the property, keeping it fresh, just making sure we're on point. And I will request pictures as well, that way I can get eyes on it until I can get back out here to see it for myself in person.
What has your involvement been with the property owner specifically? Do you have contacts with the property owner?
I really haven't had any contact with the property owner, only between emails I've been on with Inspector Gwen, or also with myself just getting the authorization that I've had.
And as you visited the store yesterday, would you guess that the store is in compliance given the state of things as you observed them?
Yes.
Is it appropriate, or am I okay to use the PowerPoint that was presented to kind of walk the court through some of the specific violations?
Certainly.
If that's what it might be using your equipment, Madam Inspector, so.
Do you need my help, or?
I hope not, but not very technical, so let's see.
The arrow up button at the bottom right?
Oh, there you go. Thank you very much. Judge, I'm going to avoid talking about violation A to the taking to heed the court's warning that knocking down any days on this might not do me any good, given that it was
Right.
subsumed into the calculations.
But it is your presentation, and you can do anything you'd like.
I very much appreciate that, but given the recesses, maybe I'll eat back a minute or two of time, given that I've caused the court headaches for Madam Inspector. So I want to talk specifically, sir, about violation C, and your involvement with this landscaping on the side of the unit, and just kind of give more context to the court. So it looks like up here, I see it's, and I think this may have come out in testimony, it's when installed May 2011. It was my understanding that it was a representation to the court that this was a part of the site model for the property. Sir, is it your understanding that this picture shows what the property looked like at its launch date?
Yes, from my understanding.
And is this, for all intents and purposes, is this kind of the perfect model of what we want the store to look like?
Yes.
Okay. So then we have an initial inspection, January 4th, 2022. Were you on the file, or were you familiar at all with the property at that time?
No, it's not.
Okay, and then this follow-up inspection, you still hadn't come onto the scene, is that right?
No. Or is that?
The date in the red box
This
is
is
incorrect.
July.
It's July 5th,
Okay. Oh, yes, I
2024.
was for that one.
That's where I meant to go with it, I'm sorry. So right here, I see July 5th, 2024. That actually would have been after you had come onto the file, is that right?
That is correct.
How would you compare how the landscaping looks from that initial inspection, January 2022, to that follow-up inspection in July 2024?
I'd say it looks good and we made some improvements.
And are you aware, and you may not be, of whether improvements were occurring between January 2022 and July 2024?
Yes, there were things being corrected. but I do believe that we were still missing just some plantings, but the trees and the landscaping, all that stuff was taken care of.
When you say it was taken care of, when in time would you say that was taken care of relative to after you came onto the file?
I would say it was complete. I believe she had another inspection May 20th, and I believe the landscaping was in compliance at that time.
Would that have been?
2023, excuse me.
That was my follow-up. So that would have been of May of 2023, and was that in the first couple of months that you had started working on the property?
Yes.
Now, this follow-up inspection that occurred in September of 2024, I believe that's when the property received that it was in compliance, is that right?
Correct.
And do you view that this property as it stands here is in compliance?
Yes.
Does the landscaping look like this as it stands today?
Yes, outside of the few things that I mentioned about the palm trees and that's it.
Yes, sir. What efforts did you, or to your knowledge, the property owner, take from May of 2023 to September of 2024 to ensure that the property was being upkept well?
At that time, we were pretty heavy on our landscapers going out there once a week, just keeping the property because we weren't sure when another inspection was going to happen, or just making sure the property was ready just in case Inspector Quinn decided to show up and maybe clear sort of any violations or anything like that, or to prevent them from falling back into violation.
So after you had come on in May 2023, is it your understanding landscaping teams were out to the property, did you say on a weekly basis?
Yes.
All right, moving to, I believe we're still within violation C, but we have the store plan in the top left, which is from, let's say a decade ago or more. Are you familiar or have you seen any pictures from the original inspection of how the landscaping looks?
I have not.
And that's because that original inspection occurred before you were working for Dollar General?
Correct.
So this re-inspection that occurs on July 5th, 2024, you were overseeing the property by that point in 2024, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
What are your observations about this plant bed here from that re-inspection?
I do know at this point the irrigation system was being tampered with, which is why we had grass dying and plants dying at that point when she came out for that particular inspection.
Can you speak more to that when you say irrigation system being tampered with? Was it, what happened with that?
It was being turned off. There was somehow another landscaping crew going out there as well, and they were turned the unit off and forget to turn it back on, and by the time our guys really paid attention to it, some of the stuff started to die, or like I said, we had the inspection and we had to resurface the violations.
What is this other landscaping crew?
There's another company that we have. They typically have the entire state of Florida. It's called Scopes. However, we took this particular store from them because at the time they were not the best that we needed. So we put divisions on this particular site.
Thank you.
Can you elaborate a little bit more about that? Did you have to make a landscaping vendor change at some point?
Yes, it was actually changed prior to me joining in this position. However, they did make that change. It just, from what I can tell, it just wasn't communicated properly to Scopes not to be on site there.
Is it your understanding that this area in particular looked better than it did right here and was improved from whenever the initial inspection flagged it through July 5th, 2024?
Yes.
How do you have that understanding?
Actually, I've been on site prior to July 5th, 2024.
How many times roughly?
Only once.
Okay, when was that? Do you remember?
Roughly, I would say probably it was in early 2023. I don't have an exact date. I have to go through my emails to see when I traveled. But
Do you have any photographs of that day?
I probably do. I have to go back and search. And some I know my vendor has some as well because we did take pictures of things that need to be taken care of while we were there. So I most likely do have some photos. I just have to go back and dig for them.
You have them now.
If you can give me some time, I can probably look and see if I have them.
I really can't give you time.
Okay, I completely understand. I would have them already, pulled up if I had known them. So I apologize, but
We can maybe handle it this way, sir. Is it your testimony that when you were on site in the early part of 2024, this particular bed looked a lot more like it did in September of 2024 than it did here in July of
Yes, correct.
2024? And would you, it's maybe speculation, but you're saying there was irrigation issues with this particular area that maybe would have given rise to how this looked?
Correct.
Talking specifically about the stump, and I know, Your Honor, you're being very patient bearing with me, but I noticed January 4th, 2022, that's the initial inspection, and that's when the violation is flagged. And we've got a follow-up inspection here, July 20th, 2022. Do you have any understanding for when the stump was removed?
I actually do not. I know that it had to be officially removed in May 2023. I'm not sure about that. July 2022. That's like follow-up inspection. So I'm not 100% sure when it was actually removed.
Okay.
This was also prior to me going.
Understood. As of July 20th, 2022, what work, to your understanding, do you still needed to be done on this area to, say, bring it into compliance?
From my understanding, a tree needed to be replaced there, but
And was that tree ultimately replaced?
no.
Well, do you know, did you ever have any interaction with Noel Eaton?
No.
Okay. You can say that the tree was not replaced as of July 20th, 2022?
Correct.
But then do you see here, on the same exhibit, Noel Eaton signed off on this tree being replanted November 17th, 2023? Have you seen that tree?
I have personally not seen the tree, but there are 50 palm trees on property.
Okay. And so our understanding of when this tree was replaced, our collective best guess is that November 17th, 2023, or sometime before.
Correct.
Did you, in your store visit yesterday, did you notice any problems in this area?
No, I did not.
Let's speak to this. What responsibility does Dollar General specifically have about these pallets that are out here?
The store team is the ones who are leaving them out there and sitting them on the side like that.
What have you personally done, or Dollar General as a whole, to ensure compliance and that pallets aren't being left outside?
I was following up with the district manager at the time. He's no longer with the company. And as of June 2024, we had a new district manager in place there, and we haven't seen anything outside since.
Do you have any knowledge of trainings that new district manager may have implemented, or best practices that are now being followed?
Yeah, just following the company's policy, honestly, by not keeping anything outside, nesting your rotators on the inside with the cardboards, and then also with any pallets, making sure that those go back with the vendors who bring them in.
Talking about the debris, we don't need to get too much into it, but is it common for you to see some scattered debris item like this day to day as you're walking through the property?
Yes.
Why is that at this particular store?
Just from where it's located, with all the traffic that they have, you're bound to see it. I think there's a little water park or golfing park across the street. Then you have the car wash that's a little bit abandoned apartment complex that's right behind the Dollar General store as well.
What is your understanding today of policies or procedures in place to make sure that debris is picked up on a daily basis?
Our policy is that the store team goes out every morning before the store opens and cleans up the parking lot.
With these shutters, these in particular received the 686 fined days mark. And looking up here, do you see any issues in particular with these shutters?
Not with the shutters, no.
What issues do you see that's kind of indicated with the red circle here?
Yeah, just the rest.
What is your understanding of, let me phrase it this way. When you took over the file in 2023, had this issue that was flagged in July 20th been addressed in any way?
No.
What is your understanding of why the roof, well, when was the first time that you started working individually on roofing issues?
In July 2023.
Okay, and what had happened, I guess, between this time, July 2022, and the time that you took over, was that hurricanes?
Yeah, well, not from this particular one, but in September, I believe, or October, there was a hurricane, and then it changed from one vendor to the next. So we had a disaster vendor take over, which is Dennis, who is working on the roofs now, who took over these particular repairs. With the initial violation, it didn't require a disaster vendor to take over it, so we had a construction company that was out making those initial repairs.
Now, that construction company that was out making those initial repairs, what time frame was that in?
From, I believe, from January of 2021 to October of 2022.
And what happened in October of 2022 that stalled that initial
Or
construction?
not 2022, I'm sorry, 2022, 2023. That's when Dennis Holler took over, and we split it to disasters to allow him to actually make those specific repairs. And it was also because of some of the work that needed to be done, that particular contractor couldn't do the work that required.